What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to College Football Talk with Peter Burnett, and the Crimson Tide have found their next head coach. Kalen DeBoer is in contract negotiations now to become the next head football coach at the University of Alabama. It's a big hire that if you said this name 4 years ago, or even just a couple of years ago when he took the job at Washington, that would get people giving you some looks for sure, but it has been a meteoric rise for the Sioux Falls native who grew up and ended up going to Sioux Falls in South Dakota, playing and coaching there, getting his first job as a head coach, and now appears to be taking over the helm at the University of Alabama. But in this video, I'm going to be going through his journey to the head coaching position, some of what the history looks like for Alabama's head coaches previously, and kind of giving my thoughts on that. But if you go on to enjoy this video, please feel free to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you're always up to date whenever I post. But first things first, Kalen DeBoer will be replacing a legend of the coaching game, Nick Saban, who stepped down just a couple of days ago. Obviously, not surprisingly, Alabama worked quickly. They had some names that were in the running that they were looking at, some names like Steve Sarkisian, who announced an extension at Texas. Kind of the initial frontrunner, Dan Lanning, announced that he was sticking around with a hype video at the University of Oregon, and among those, a few other names that kind of, quieted down any potential interest. But kind of what really increased the attention towards Kalen DeBoer was that he had an interview scheduled at a Seattle radio station, I believe on Thursday, yesterday as I'm recording this video, that he ended up, I'm assuming, canceling now. They said rescheduling at that time, but kind of a whirlwind last 48, 72 hours since Saban announced his decision to retire and will still be involved in the program. He had a really good interview with Reese Davis that's on ESPN's YouTube channel. If you haven't had a chance to see that, it's a good 25-minute, I believe, watch. Definitely something to tune into. But let's go over, I think first I'm going to go over DeBoer's rise and then kind of go over what he's stepping into, some of the history, especially more so recently, of Alabama head coaches. So Kalen DeBoer has a almost spotless record, really. He's 104-12, and he has 11 or more wins in 7 of his 9 seasons coaching. And where he got his start was at Sioux Falls. He played football there, I believe, as a wide receiver, and eventually rose to head coach. He took over that position in 2005. He held it through 2009, and in that tenure, he went 67-3 and won 3 NAIA national championships. And interestingly enough, Sioux Falls definitely intrigued me when hype started building around what Washington was doing this season, even going back to last year a little bit, but especially this year, finding out that he was from Sioux Falls. I work in the Omaha metro area as a sports editor at a couple of papers here, and Sioux Falls is about a 3-hour drive north, so not too far away from here. So definitely kind of piqued my interest a little bit when I heard about that. But that's where he got his start. Then after that, he kind of jumped up to the FCS level at Southern Illinois as an offensive coordinator and wide receivers coach from 2010 to 2013. Then he made the jump to FBS, going to the MACtion with Eastern Michigan, where he was, again, coordinator, offensive coordinator, and quarterbacks coach. And he held that position at his next 2 stops. He was at Eastern Michigan from 2014 to 16. Again, same position then at Fresno State 2017 and 18. And then offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Indiana in 2019, which I believe Michael Penix Jr., who he coached at Washington, obviously this year, to a Heisman runner-up and Maxwell Award season, was his quarterback there at Indiana. I will have to verify that if Penix was there. I know he played the 2020 season, but I believe he was there in 2019 as well. And then after a good Indiana offense in 2019, kind of, used that to get into a position as head coach for the first time at the FBS level, and he went to Fresno State. First season in charge, led the Bulldogs through the 2020 COVID season, led them to a 3-3 record, and then the next season increased that production and the winning to a 9-3 record, and he kind of parlayed that into the head coaching position at Washington. So he takes over in Seattle for Jimmy Lake, who had been there, I think, a year, maybe 2 years, didn't have a very long tenure there, and Washington was kind of in the doldrums. They were struggling. They hadn't really done much since the 2016 season when they made the college football playoff and lost to Alabama. But he's hired there, and in his first season, he guides them to an 11-2 record, an Alamo Bowl win over Texas, who obviously this year they would end up facing again. And what he would do at Washington is he would transform the Huskies into the best offense in college football. You look at statistically in terms of what they were able to do, I think the only team that is on par with them this year, game after game throughout the year, and in terms of production, is probably LSU, led by, obviously, Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors, the wide receiver. And I don't really think any other offense comes too close to touching either one of those programs. Oregon had a good offense as well, but I think those were the top two offenses. And overall, his record at Washington was 25-3. Obviously, he has a college football playoff appearance, winning the Sugar Bowl over Texas this year, and then takes the Huskies to the national championship game where they lost to Michigan this year. And he was, because of that, he was named the 2023 AP Coach of the Year. Several other distinctions, several other awarding bodies, I guess, gave DeBoer the Head Coach of the Year award. So a phenomenal, just again, meteoric rise to the top of college football. I mean, Nick Saban established the Alabama head coaching position as the best in college football. Sure, there are other programs that maybe, a Georgia that has beaten them, recently, but I mean, Alabama won the SEC championship this year, so I think they're, in terms of national championships, Georgia is, right near the top. Obviously, Michigan is at the very top because they are the defending national champions now, but Alabama is still probably the most lucrative job in college football right now. And it also, though, creates the most pressure. I mean, you are replacing a legend of the coaching game. I would say the best of all time. I don't think there's too much debate with that. There's another candidate is obviously a former Alabama coach as well, Bear Bryant, who led the Crimson Tide to 6 national championships, the same as Saban, during his long tenure from 1958 to 1982. And there have been several other big-time names in the Alabama Crimson Tide program. You have, I think, College Football Hall of Famers Wallace Wade, who made even more of a name for himself, I think, at Duke, but during his time at Alabama in 1923, at Duke, the stadium's named after him, 1923 to 30 at Alabama, 3-time national champion, and then the guy who comes in right after him, Frank Thomas, 1931 to 46, guides the Crimson Tide to 2 national championships. And then a little bit of a period, well, I guess during that period soon after, but like a 12-year period or so before Bryant came in, Alabama wasn't quite as, at the top of college football, but they were certainly still in the discussion back then. Not like I can really, recall that or whatever, but Bryant comes in and guides them on an incredible run for, what would that be, well over 20 years, about 24 years, I think is how long he was there, 24, 25. And then a few years until Gene Stallings comes in, 1990 to 96, and he guides the Crimson Tide to a couple of titles. But then, after Stallings' tenure ended in 1996, Alabama was kind of thrown into kind of just a dark period for the Crimson Tide program. They, from 1997 to 2006, went just 51-55, so they were under 500 during that period, just one SEC Conference championship. And overall, the coaches that were there during that time, they tried at first Mike Dubose, I think is how you say his name, who coached there for 3 or 4 years and couldn't really lead the Tide anywhere. Then Dennis Francione, I think, came in for a couple of seasons, again, not very well. And then Mike Shula came in and was probably had the worst of those tenures. He was there for longer. And so when Saban took over in 2006, that wasn't the same Crimson Tide team, certainly as what Bear Bryant had established there, and even what Gene Stallings has had there as well. So Alabama is, at the top of college football in terms of all-time national championships at the FBS level. You have teams like Princeton and Yale that I think have more, around the same number of national championships, but because of their history, Alabama is still the top program to coach. So Kalen DeBoer is coming in. Obviously, he is an offensive mastermind. Alabama, especially during the Saban tenure, has relied oftentimes on a really stocky, powerful defense. So it'll be interesting to see who DeBoer brings in as defensive coordinator. It's possible he brings in somebody from Washington, or maybe he keeps somebody on staff at Alabama. That'll be something to keep an eye on as well here in the coming days and potentially weeks. I imagine that would be announced shortly. but we will have to keep an eye on that. So I think this is a really good hire for Alabama. I think, a name that I thought would maybe be thrown in there more, but it seems that the fan base doesn't really want him and has kind of lost a little bit of his momentum as one of the top coaches in college football. Dabo Swinney, who spent at least a season, maybe a couple of seasons at Alabama early on in his coaching career. That was one that I was a little bit surprised that there wasn't really much interest for him at all, really, and especially from the fans. But I think it's a triple of a hire. Will it be a home run? That's yet to be seen. But I do believe it's a smart hire for the Crimson Tide. He has proven to be a winner at each of his stops. Again, it's been a very, very quick rise from being a head coach at the NAIA level as recently as 2009, and especially going from Fresno State to Washington to Alabama all within 4 years is certainly a very quick rise. But it'll be interesting to see where Kalen DeBoer is able to lead the Crimson Tide. Will he be able to keep them in the running with Georgia, with Texas coming in, Oklahoma coming in to join the SEC? I wouldn't be shocked if Alabama takes a slight dip this year, but we'll also just have to keep in mind and keep an eye out for who DeBoer brings in the transfer portal. But it's a big hire, big news in the college football world, and I'm looking forward to seeing where DeBoer leads this Crimson Tide program. But if you've enjoyed this video, again, please feel free to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those post notifications. But that's it for this video of College Football Talk. I'm your host, Peter Burnett, signing out. Peace.